session. It is 5 o'clock. And everybody please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Liberty and justice for all.
I salute
I salute the flag, the state of New Mexico. The symbol of perfect friendship among united. Please let the minutes show that 3 of us are on. Mr. Guadiana and Mr. Cordova aren't on yet. Mr. Cordova is out of town, so I don't think he's going to be on.
I'm on.
Guardiana's on, Mr. Sepulveda. Guardiana's on.
Okay, now I see him. Hello, Gilbert.
Hey, Mr. Sepulveda.
Okay, entertain a motion for approval of agenda items.
Gomez, so moved.
Second,
Guadiana, I'll second. But I had a question. How come we're not continuing with public input on the latter part of the agenda?
don't know why it was left out today.
Okay, so it's just an oversight?
Yeah,
Okay.
any questions on the other questions on the agenda?
Mr. Sepulveda and board members. I have a question, sir.
Go ahead, Mr.
Under administration, items D, E, and F are all combined and on the same application. I would like to advise the board that we can do what we call an agenda, putting them together and bringing them all under one vote. It's a consent agenda item, and I don't have approval to do that, but as the board, if you all want to take it under one vote, since it applies to one application, then you can ask questions of Jose here in a little bit when it gets to that. But Mr. President, members of the board, I do recommend that we consider that as a consent agenda in one vote.
Any objections right now? No? Okay.
Thank
We
you.
got a
Board.
motion and a second for approval of agenda items. Take a roll call vote. Mr. Holguin,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of May the 11th.
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Williana, second.
I second.
Second by Mr. Holguin. Any questions or corrections to the minutes? None. Call for a roll call vote. Mr. Holguin,
Yes.
Mr. Williana,
Yes.
myself, yes. Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
okay. Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to update on unfinished business, which is the status of the bond report.
At
Mr.
this time,
Mendoza.
Mr. President, members of the board, I would like for Mr. let's talk about, first draw. And, we'll have Mr. Peru. Can you please start, Mr. Peru, on draw one?
Sure. Let me give it. I was just gonna give an update on the phases. One of the things we just got the contract, so we can get a contract to the plumbing, and so we can get all the plumbing and the done at the Hurley Portable. The lowest bid came in at $4,598. That'll include all the plumbing to the sewer plumbing to get that hooked up to the main building. It'll also get the water to the building, and we should have everything taken care of. We'll be able to fix 3 commodes. There was two pre-K commodes and a regular commode that we have to fix, and a faucet also. The water heater looks like it's intact. We won't know until we get everything running, but that's what they put the bid in to get the sewer, the water hooked up, and the commode. So that one came in at $4,598. We will go to bid on the furnace and the air conditioners probably like in July, when we see about where we're at with our budget. And so we should be able to get that thing going with, like I said, with the sewer and the water here in a few weeks. Also, the roof project is complete at the main office. We're looking at getting some bids sometime after July to get the inside done for the special education office. We're going to have to go in. It's got the plaster through the inside like they used to make those buildings back in the 30s and 40s. We got to bring that down, take it and clean it up, and then probably do a drop ceiling in there so it'll heat and cool a little bit better. Also, on that phase is the gym. The gym at Central. Right now, we're working with the architects to be able to make sure that we have the drawings intact so that we will not go over budget. We're trying to stay within our budget so we can get everything taken care of for the gym at Central. You have anything to add to that, Mr. Mendoza?
No, you covered everything that's outstanding at this point. Board members, any questions on Mr. Peru's presentation on draw one?
No questions.
Okay, so there's no questions, then I'll speak to draw two. And draw two is the one that it was included with all our baseball, softball, track, and high school football, and they were all turfed. They're complete. The only thing we're doing is some warranty work that's being done on the track field and softball field at this time. The only projects left is number one is at Hurley. We still have to do a playground. Once Mr. Peru completes the portable there, then in cooperation with our principal, we will come in and get started on a playground there in Hurley for the early childhood kids. The same thing at San Lorenzo. We still need to do the playground there. But let me tell you, board members, the trouble we're having there is the travel from out of town, or like from Albuquerque, and as Mr. Peru has always stated, that not anybody can just come and put these child elementary playgrounds, because they have to meet certain safety standards, and there's only so many companies that are certified. And unfortunately, they're from out of town, and then the COVID is limiting them from traveling, so that's why we're halting right now and holding on to these projects. So with that in mind, that completes this part. So any questions, board members?
What about the gym that you were planning for the high school for basketball and wrestling purposes?
Okay, at this time, the only one that we're in process of working with and with our architects is the one at Central. I'll yield to George on that. George, do you have anything to add to that, please?
Yeah, now we're yielding to it right now just because of the budget. We just don't have the money with everything the way it is. We don't have the money to start anything with the one at the high school. We have enough money to be able to complete the one at the, so we'll go with the one at Central, and then we'll have to look at the one for the high school a little later.
How much is needed for the high school one, and how much is needed for the high school one, and what is the possibility that there's going to be enough money left to do that?
For the high school one, we're looking at it's going to run us between $1 and $1.2 million possibly. And right now, I don't know how much we're going to have left over after we complete everything. So I mean, that's why I think right now we'll just table it if we can. That way we can see what we can do at a later date see what money we have left.
So George, what kind of time frame are we talking about here? I mean, you say later on down the road. What are you thinking?
One of the things is once we complete all our projects and we know exactly what money we have left with the bonds, you know, from completing all the projects, and then at that time we can probably come back to the table and see, you know, if we have 500,000 or 600,000, or if we have 200,000, we'll know more or less where we're at, you know, because it's going to run us to be able to facilitate that thing well, with the bathrooms and everything. We're looking at like 1.2 million is what the architects were looking at.
So with the delays on the other projects, are you looking at maybe having some kind of a figure established as to what we have left over by November, or when?
Again, Mr. Guardiana, please understand that like, a good example is playground projects. We're having to halt and wait on those because the construction companies are not allowed to travel out of town or certain mileage. So that's where we're at a halt. Once we finish also everything detailed and everything checked with the roof here at the central office, we should have some money there too. So I wish I could tell you, but at the same time, we depend on all these architects and contractors to come through and give us go through a punch list to be able to figure out what it is so that Terry can put the figures to what the amounts that will be left and we can use in these other projects.
Yeah, and
That's
I think once we finish, Mr. Wyanda, one of the things that we can do is we can have Terry look at the numbers, and that way Terry can give us some exact numbers and see where we're at. Are you on, Terry, where you can maybe, I mean, once we finish those timelines, do you think we can probably get something concrete for them, or something where we know more or less where we're at?
I'm here. Once we start closing out projects, we can check balances and move the balances into a total balance, and then we can decide, you know, how much we have left in all the project, you know, and what we have left to complete. It's just the smaller projects that are scattered, and so we don't have an exact time frame on specific projects. So we've got the pre-K, we've got the restrooms at the high school, we've got the roof on phase 1, and then the central elementary gym. And then in phase 2, we're still tying up and wrapping up some things with warranties, and so we don't have an actual balance of what the projects have costed us at this point.
so, Mr. Guardiana, what we'll do, and I'll make sure that we come back after every board meeting and have an update, okay? So I can tell you in the next month's board meeting, we'll come back. Hopefully we'll have some more concrete information and balances.
Okay, and I know one of the things I was going to mention is on the bathrooms at the high school. We were just waiting on one more stall. They're supposed to install that this week, and we're completed. So they will probably turn the keys over to us by like Thursday or Friday, and then that way, hopefully, the board can come over and look at them and see what they think. And then we should have the final payout for that one on, and that's the bathrooms at the high school.
Terry, on the printout that you gave us last board meeting, on the funds, you had 1.1 million that was unallocated. Was that for something else?
That we haven't allocated that to the central project yet because we haven't actually picked a contractor. So there's nothing encumbered on that.
Okay.
Except for the architects.
So that's intended for the central project.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mendoza
Anything else?
or Toy,
Yes,
Mr. President.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. In regards to the cameras that would put in the baseball field and the football field, or surveillance cameras, and not now, but if they could write it, what the capabilities of these cameras are and what the cost was, and if they can just attach it to our board packet. I think it's safety and security that we don't go over it in public. but I think it's important that we know what the schematics or what these cameras are actually capable of doing.
I'll make sure it's on the agenda for the next board meeting. And Victor, are you online, Victor? Mr. Arambula, are you online?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay, Victor, I don't know if you've heard Mr. Gomez asking for a report on that, and I'll make sure we get everything, get with Terry and come up with the total costs and what they're, a report on these cameras. And remember, you and I talked about them this afternoon, how we wanted to upgrade them and have sensors too, to pick up movement and possibly even have lights that will turn on when there's movement on the field. We do have some dark spots and so forth. Please be ready to report on the next board meeting.
Oh, yes, sir, will do.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez.
Okay, anything else? This brings us to public input. At this time, we'll take were there any questions in reference to our agenda? None? Okay, moves us to administration.
Yes, sir, Mr. President and members of the board, every year the board recognizes two staff members who they feel have contributed a lot to our student growth and our student participation and just overall excelling in working with our kids. And this year, Mr. Cordova usually is the one that does it, but Mr. Cordova is tied up on a delivery for the Forest Service. But Mr. Sepulveda, do you have anything to add before we present these online?
Every year, the New Mexico activities allows us to give a student achievement. It's called a Student Achievement Award, and we can give it to anybody that the members of the Region 8 committee select. And community, we can give it to a student, we can give it to a teacher, we can give it to a parent, anybody that the members of the Region 8 decide that they want to give it to. And also has the award and go to Gary Garcia and Lee. And Mr. Mendoza will read it, and you're
Okay.
welcome to come by
Thank you,
the
Mr.
office and
Okay, these are the awards that are presented by the New Mexico School Board Association together with the Cobre School District Board of Education. And I'm reading it here because on the screen it doesn't come out as clear. But I was told that when I show it to you all, it's backwards. So it's like looking in a mirror, I guess. So we're going to have to read it to you. But this is a Excellence in Student Award, and it's presented by the New Mexico School Board Association in cooperation with the local school board of education in recognition of outstanding role played in improving student achievement in the year 2020. And this year's award goes to Cindy Lee and Gary Garcia. And Cindy Lee, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Ms. Lee?
Yes, I am.
Can we just have a word from you? Congratulations on behalf of the superintendent, the board, and all administration that's present.
Well, thank you. I'm very honored. I was not expecting this. That's why I was invited to the meeting. I appreciate very much the confidence that the school board, that this means confidence from administration and school board and what's happening in my classroom. I don't know, I didn't even know anything about this award, but I or I had not heard about it, but I am very, just from what you read, I appreciate it very much. I appreciate your support and your confidence that what's happening in my classroom is in line with what the goals of the district are.
Again, congratulations, Ms. Lee. And now,
Congratulations, Ms. Lee.
Gary, are you on?
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Garcia, Gary?
Yes.
Okay, can we have a few words from you?
Sure. It's a great honor. I want to thank you guys all for everything. Without your guys' support, a lot of this wouldn't be possible. I owe a lot of success to a lot of the community and everybody else because, with our school district being so small, especially in our CTE programs, we don't have the numbers as the other schools do, the bigger schools. And so, it takes a lot of work to get all our students recognized and, awarded. This year we had 14 students with Skills USA. I had 9 students, seniors, and, they missed out on competing for skills their senior year, but they were also all awarded and they had the opportunity to receive a scholarship for tuition and books, every single one of them. And and it's good to look back and see them succeed, but it also recognizing what we're doing at Cobre High School, all the hard work, and especially with COVID-19 and, us teachers and everybody else going the extra mile. And it's good to get recognized, with our CTE programs. And it's really a lot of hard work. I had students competing, we had one student graduate with the associates. He's one of our Skills USA students in welding. And then we also had every single one of our students, they're competing in nursing, and now they're going on to fulfill their nursing degrees. We have some going into EMT, some going into crime scene investigation. Mr. Gomez, thank you for your help in allowing, the sheriff department to come and train us and helping us there. It's a lot of work, and especially in the summers, that's when we put in all the extra time, getting everybody recognized. And, that just goes to show, what, we may be a small district, but we're reaching our students and we're doing the right things, talking with Susan and Natalie from the CTE director and from Susan from PED, we're all working together and looking at that Carl Perkins grant and trying to get more funding, trying to find a way to, continue growing in our community and continue growing here at Cobre High School. And I guarantee you, a lot of like Susan was asking me, what is it? What are you guys doing down at Cobre High School that you guys are so successful every year in skills? And you know what? And it's just reaching out to community and trying to put everything back together, giving it back to the students. And you know what? That's a reflection on you guys and your support. And it does take a lot of work. You know what? Just receiving this award, and I thank you. I really do appreciate it because it is a lot of work. And you know what? Hat goes off. And thank you guys a lot.
Congratulations, Mr. Garcia.
Thanks.
Congratulations. And
Thank you.
thank you both for all your job, hard work that you guys do.
Thank you. And it's the students, I think Gary would agree, we facilitate the students and we have students who work hard and
Sure.
represent our district well, whether MESA or skills or band or whatever. Cobre students do stand out in the state.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you, both of you, and congratulations. And we'll have these awards. If you can come by and pick it up at your leisure time. How's that? We will have them here for you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to move on, Mr. Sepulveda.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Senor.
under administration B, approval of the 220-221 school board meetings. If you will look at the schedule that we presented to you, you will notice that there's only one board meeting set here. And the purpose of me proposing this as your superintendent to the board is that we're having to postpone some meetings because of so much that's changing. I'm not saying not have the second, but I'd like to be able to schedule it as needed for this a year or half a year because so much is subject to change. In talking to the PID and the superintendents last week, superintendents this morning, we still don't have a definite start date. Irene was asking about our convocation, when teachers report, we still don't know, because I know our calendar says we're going to start August the 3rd, but in reality, the PID is saying they're not, looks like we're not going to be able to start until the 15th. But then everything is up in the air, and if we're going to put a second meeting and then we have to be canceling it, it just doesn't look right in the side of the PID department. So I'm recommending to the school board that we go ahead and approve the first meetings that we know we can handle. And some of these are the second Monday, the others are the fourth Monday, but we're staying with what you've all had in the past. But that's the rationale of what I'm proposing that we do this, at least for this current school year, because there's also talk about some districts proposing to the PID of not starting school at all till January 1st, till after the 1st, because according to what our CDC center says, we're going to spike out in October, and we're going to have to close schools if that's the case. So that's what you're hearing there. So that's my rationale. Any questions or comments, board members?
Mr. Mendoza, is this proposal that you're making, would it be just for this school year? Because there's a couple of things that we're going to have to do. If we do, we're going to have to change our board resolution and change those dates on the resolution that we submit. The other thing is going to be that we're going to have to schedule somehow that we have maybe a teacher, because we're going to get away from visiting the individual schools, that we're going to have at least one teacher kind of give us a report once a month on these accomplishments that they're doing. So those are some of the things that we're going to have to reschedule if we go to one meeting a month.
What I'm not proposing that we do this permanently, sir. What I'm doing is I cannot recommend dates at this point, especially the first semester, because everything is up in the air. All right, and yes, I strongly agree with you and the rest of the board that we need to take second board meetings to the schools, and I have no problem with that. But what I'd like to do is, that's why I'm saying I can, if we go into July and August and we know when we're going to be able to set the dates and set them correctly, by all means, let's put them on. But at this point, I say that we leave it open, and then we can come back and as early as the next board meeting if we have something concrete. Okay, because we also met today, and then you'll get a report later on in under the COVID-19 where we've got the plans that we're coming up with, and you'll see what we're talking about. But in the meantime, this is what we need. And no, I'm not proposing to change what you have in your resolution about your two board meetings. But at this point, this is what I'd like to recommend here till, and we can come back and revisit this monthly until we can put a concrete schedule in place.
Still think
So you know the
but I
resolution,
should change the resolution, sir, just to comply with the law.
Okay, but then we can always come back and change it again next year when we know something better. Is what it's my opinion, sir.
But right now, for the rest of the school year, or until this
So the resolution
things
would have to
settle down, I'm okay with it.
Well, that's all I'm
I don't know
saying,
how the
sir.
rest
I'm not
of-
here to want to change.
Yeah.
I know, I just want to hear from
I'm-
the rest of the board.
Yeah, I don't know how the rest of the board feel.
So, Mr. President, Mr. Superintendent, this is Gabe again. my preference would be to keep the scheduled meetings as planned and cancel as needed. I feel like we are, one board meeting per month isn't enough to keep us abreast of the situation as it develops, especially with this COVID-19 situation. I feel like more is better, and the more updates that we can get from the superintendent in regards to our plan for proceeding into the school year with this COVID-19 scenario is critical. I mean, I feel like I need more information and not less. So I would propose we keep the schedule as planned and meet twice a month. That's my input.
Thank you, Gabe.
And Mr. President, then I recommend let's put it on the board and let's see if we get a motion to that effect, Gabriel, or whatever. I just need some guidance. But I'm going to tell you right now, it's hard. We'll go with the second and fourth Monday. That's no problem there. But it's having to change them again that makes a thing. But I'm here, and it's the board's decision. I'm okay either way. But let me know, because we got to decide tonight, because we got to get that resolution in this month.
Anybody else, any comments?
This is Gilbert Guadiana, and I'm in agreement with Gabe. The predicament is very, it's not very clear in terms of what's going to happen. So our access to information on a more frequent basis keeps us more informed and helps, I would think, make preparations for any of the anticipated changes or at least contingency plans. And I am of the opinion that the board has a responsibility of being actively involved in preparing for changes in budget, for changes in program, and putting us on the shelf for the months until it gets affirmed, and then we vote for it after the fact again, is not really showing that we're involved and engaged and involved in the actual decisions or recommendations that come forward. So I would support continuing with the two meetings a month.
Thank you, Mr. Guadiana.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anything else?
Mr. President, Mr. Superintendent, I'm in agreement with the other two board members. I think it's important that we have both meetings. If for some reason we can't have that second meeting and we need to cancel, then so be it. But I think it's important that with what's going on, the updates and anything that's going on, it is our responsibility to know what's going on.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Thank you,
Mr.
Frank.
President, it being an action item, then I think we need one of the three board members that spoke up and wanting to make sure that we fill in the second one. It's going to be the same. It's Monday, the second Monday, then the fourth Monday, and I'll have Irene fill this out. But I need a board action. That's the way you want to go, so that we can fill it in and then send it in tomorrow with our report. Okay.
Okay. Entertain a motion to continue as is.
I move, this is Gilbert, I move that we continue with regular monthly meetings on the second and fourth Mondays of the week throughout for the next calendar school year.
This is Gabriel Yee, and I second that motion.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying, well, all right. We'll take a roll call vote. Gabe?
Yes.
Mr. Guadiana?
Yes, yes.
Self, yes. Mr. Gomez?
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll continue as is.
Thank you,
Move
board
us to item
members.
C.
Yes, approval of the 2020 idea, 21 Idea B application. Melissa, are you with us?
Yes, I am. So good evening,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
President and members of the board. I'm going to go ahead and share my
Good
screen.
evening.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to refer to in your board packet, the Idea B application version A budget summary. And I believe everybody was given a copy of the budget summary. And while you guys are looking at that, I will just walk you through what I had to compile for this year's budget application. It was flat funding. We didn't really receive much of an increase. We were told to use last year's budget as a guide. And so we go all the time with preliminary planning allocations. And then if there's any carryover, then we submit for, for an RFR and redistribute funds if that's the case. We have not to date received any carryover letters or anything like that. So hopefully those will come within a couple of weeks. But for next year, we were given $376,993.83 for our Idea B 24106 fund and $15,037 for our preschool budget. And so I'd like to share with you how we go about planning for that. In Objective 1, 24106, we are budgeting $234,412. And that mostly consists of, let's see, let me see if I'm going too fast. This mostly consists of IAs. In this objective, sorry, I think I scrolled too much. Okay, in this objective, we have to plan for our substitutes and our substitute and our SPED IAs. So with this amount of money, we are funding 6 instructional assistants at 100% and 1 out of the preschool special ed budget instructional assistant at 40%. And that includes their salaries and their benefits. Okay. And then we also include a increment for those that have attained level 3 licensure. The amount of $1,600 is just a little bit of an incentive when they get that level 3. So that's kind of always been put in place, and we have about 4 of those that are at level 3 because I believe it's $600. No, $400 a piece. Let's see. We go ahead and we had to just redistribute funds. So there's a little bit of money for some educational supplies and materials, $1,200. There's some money allocated for some professional development if they had to attend some workshops. So that is in the amount of $2,000. And again, this was stretched really, really thin. But for Objective 1, the percent of our budget is 62.18% of that budget in Objective 1 for direct student support. Instructional support, Objective 2, we have allocated $46,621.40. Again, we use about $15,000 with our contract staff for additional training and evaluations. There's sometimes specialty evaluations that we have to conduct, autism and assistive technology that we are not, our staff is not capable of doing that. So we may have to obtain that at some point. Again, we had to allocate some educational supplies and materials, about $1121.40 is what we were able to do. and professional development, $2,500. We also, in this line item, we have the privilege of providing a work study for our students with disabilities. We are able to provide at least 25 of our special ed students at the high school with an opportunity to earn some paid work study hours, and we allocate $28,000 for that, and that includes benefits as well. So that's a good plus for us. We try not to mess with that. Objective 2 of our budget, there's 12% of the budget that's allocated to this function. Objective 3 is like for administrative costs, staff related to that, and we really just have one special ed clerk, and that's her salary and benefits at $44,200. We also have to allocate for indirect costs at about 3.5% of our budget. So for 24-106, that comes out to $13,760, and for 24-109, $548. So we also have to include our bus contractor. We contract some IAs to help with the transportation of our little pre-K kids and some of our special ed kids in the amount of $38,000. And so we pay our bus contractor to contract bus aids. And so objective 3 comes out to $95,960.43. So that's about 25% of our budget. And then the preschool side is just the indirect costs. So this is due around now, every June, and this is what I submit to the state for approval. Again, the budget summary just kind of what summarizes everything there on the sheet. We do have an excess cost requirement at 40-day. There were 233 special ed students in our district. And so if we're projecting funding, we have to probably spend about $10,000, the upwards of $10,700 on elementary students before the state will allow us to spend our IDEA B funds. The same thing with the high school students. So it's a little bit of a high number. I think this year we have to go back and just really relook at our numbers and make sure that everybody that is receiving special education is correctly identified and has the correct eligibility. So that's what I had to submit, and I present that to you for your approval to move forward.
Melissa, this is Gilbert Guadiana. Can you go over
Yes.
the percentage of, was that 62% of the budget that would go directly to student services on objective 1?
Let me go back. Okay. $62.18% in the 24-106 fund, and 96.35% in the 24-109 fund.
So do you have measurables in terms of what worked last year versus what you need to address at this year? Is there any particular focus you're shifting? I heard a lot of complaints about testing, and I don't know if that applies necessarily to this part of the program, that it seemed to be really difficult to get kids tested, like say for either ADHD or for dyslexia, different things like that.
Right, and so I think with our budget, there's certain requirements that we have to have so much allocated for direct student support, and then as you get into objective 2 and objective 3, you're expected to send, allocate less money because that's not direct student support. When it comes to assessment of children, all we're supposed to follow, we're required by law to follow the SAT process, SAT referral process, the student assistance team referral process. So if the steps have not been followed and say tier 2 or in tier 1B interventions have not been done, we often have to go back and redo those steps. So it's not, there's a little bit of a checks and balances. You can't just bypass that whole thing altogether and just ask for special ed evaluation. There's a lot of times, well, you can, but there's a lot of times we have to go back and say, we need this information before we proceed. So each case is analyzed individually, and then the information is compiled, and then we move forward the evaluation team. So I understand this year we're moving to a multi-layer system of support. So our SAT referral process will be realigned and look a little different. So hopefully that'll ease some of the backlog.
And in terms of the 6 assistants and 1 40% assistant, how does that relate in terms of the caseload? How many do you have that are special ed certified, or what the certifications that they need that is supported by the assistants? That part you didn't give us.
So all our IAs that are carried on our 24106, they are working in the special education setting. Our one-to-ones are funded from another source. Our preschool IAs, with this limited number that that the state allows us, we're only allowed. It's only enough to pay for 40% of that IA's salary. So they are all certified in special ed as far as training and their licensures as IAs.
Last year, there were cases, at least what I saw in elementary school and in the high school, that there were one-to-ones that were not being done, that were being done more by assistants, if at all.
Yes, sir, and that's typical. When we have a one-to-one student, we usually do a one-to-one instructional assistant. That's what we provide. And then when the teacher is teaching, the IA goes off and helps with the whole class, but that student is always covered as a one-to-one.
Okay, maybe at some point you can give us an idea last year of the coverage, because I was under the, at least from what I saw, there were cases of one-to-ones that weren't being monitored. And that's what I would want to see. That's what I would like to see in the budget, in terms of, if that was the case, if you have some observations of shortcomings of last year on how it is you're addressing it, rather than just going forward with presenting the numbers as they were the previous year. And the other part is it seems like some movement went towards the inclusion versus the pullout practices. And if you had any observation as to whether one was more effective than the other, and how that's being addressed for the next school year.
So with the inclusion model, and again, all students have an individualized education plan. So every plan has to be considered individually. So it's not just a one size fits all. So when we were asked to try to fit our SPED model into a more inclusive practices, we looked at every single IEP to determine level of services and to cover the provision of services across the board, because ultimately that's our job. So I believe as we were coming into a groove and seeing some good progress, that's around the time we went to spring break, and then here we are today. So I don't think we have like rich data about how that inclusion really benefited or took hold there at one of the elementaries. But hopefully when we resume, we can get that data going. But the guidance definitely from the state is always to leave this child in the least restrictive setting to the degree possible, and then remove them for one-to-one instruction or individualized instruction or small group instruction. So that's the movement. And definitely our pre-K programs are all inclusive. And so we just have to ensure that we are following every single IEP to the T. So, you know, I know that sounds maybe a little mushy, but it is everything's based on an individual basis, and definitely by the IEP team. Everything's driven by the IEP team, the parent and the IEP team. So there's no unilateral decisions based on the child or made for the child.
Okay, what I was looking for was obviously not individual per, but more systematically what you saw.
Right. And hopefully we can, you know, get some of that data collected as far as like our testing. I know I was interested to see how that was going to impact testing and things like that model. So maybe this year we'll get a chance to do that, you know, in some fashion.
Exactly.
Okay. Mendoza,
The administration
do I hear a
recommends,
recommendation?
the administration recommends that you approve the Idea B application as presented by our director.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
Gomez, so moved.
Motion by Mr. Gomez, second.
This is Gabe, I second.
Second by Mr. Holguin. Any other questions? Call for a roll call vote. Mr. Holguin,
Yes.
Mr. Guadiana,
Yes.
myself, yes. Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
all against, any against? Motion carries. Moves us to item D.
As we discussed earlier, yes, as we discussed earlier, the board approved that we join D, E, and F as the consent agenda. And at this time, I'd like Mr. Macedo, please, Dr. Wade.
Mr. President, members of the board, the consolidated application, Title I, Title II, and Title III is back as a consolidated application, and it's a renewal application. There's 3 different budgets. If you have any questions on any particular one, you have the application in front of you. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions in regards to any of the 3, but it is a consolidated application just broken down into 3 parts. Again, Title I is to support and put emphasis on reducing achievement gaps and students, you know, to emphasize equal access for students. Title II is more so professional development. And Title III is to support our English language learners.
I had a question.
Okay.
If it's appropriate, this is Gilbert again, on Title I. Title I calls for funding, an appropriate use of funding for food, shelter, and a number of other different things. And how is that determined and accounted for?
So there's certain set-asides that are required when we write the application, that we set aside an amount of funds for anybody, you know, that may be homeless, or any student foster home. If and when that situation arises where students may need some of those services, we have some funds set aside to be able to support that. If it isn't used, like it hasn't been used in the past, it rolls over into the general budget and goes to the schools.
So last year we had, what would you call it? The places where people could come in and pick up food. I'm sorry. And we actually sent food home with students in backpacks. Was that funded by this program?
No, sir, those are not allowable expenditures for pantries or for backpack. What we've done in the past, we've used some of our funds from Freeport and I think operational. It has become expensive. It runs in the $10,000-$20,000. So no, it doesn't come from Title I, but we've used other funds to support that in the past.
Okay, so when it says funds may be used for food, clothing, or lodging, what kind of examples do you have of that we've used it for?
We haven't. Those are set aside for homeless kids. Any kid that has been identified as homeless, any kid that is in foster care, and through the legal process, if they need transportation, we have those funds set aside to be able to provide those services for those kids. For the most part, our district provides transportation to all students. Our district provides clothing to those students in need through our different partners like KOAT, who donates jackets, school supplies. Freeport donates supplies and things like that. So for the most part, we cover those needs as they arise. However, we set aside just in case we have an emergency and we need to come up with some funds for those kids that have those needs.
Is there information that the public has as to the availability of these funds?
Yes, the nurse works in collaboration. She's the liaison, and we often put out a brochure at the schools or at the different businesses that those funds are available. The schools know that those funds are available, and through their introductions at the beginning of the school year, when they talk about the Title I services, they make those that information available as well.
Okay.
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 Do I have a recommendation, Mr. Mendoza?
Mr. President, members of the board, the administration recommends that you approve Title I, Title II, and Title III as presented by our director.
You heard the recommendation, do I hear a motion? Go ahead.
I had another question on I believe it was Title II? You have a high school, no, okay. You have high school and the Snell on one application, and then you have the elementary schools, but you only list Bayard Elementary in that application. Does it not also include? That would be, I'm sorry, that's on the state, I'm sorry, that's on the state bilingual multicultural programs.
Okay, and I can answer that question now. We gave you an application that's identical for all 4 elementaries. So we gave you an elementary school, middle school, and a high school. That way you would have an idea of the different levels. But the Central, Hurley, and San Lorenzo, they're all the same as Bayard. We did the same thing last year to cut down on paper, but it's the same.
Okay, sorry for taking that out of order.
No, that's okay.
Mr. Sepulveda.
Mendoza.
Mr. Pueblo, the recommendation stands, okay?
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
Gomez, so moved.
This is.
Motion
I'll
by Mr.
second.
Gomez, second.
I'll second.
What's that?
This is Gilbert. Gilbert.
Okay. Second by Mr. Liana. Any other questions? Call for a roll call vote. Mr. Holguin,
Yes.
Mr. Wadiana,
Yes.
myself, yes. Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Moves us to bilingual. Item G.
Okay, item G is approval of the bilingual application, and I'll have Dr. Carrillo explain this.
Again, Mr. President, members of the board, the bilingual application that you have in front of you is a renewal application that we do on an annual basis. 3 levels, elementary, middle school, and high school. And I stand for questions.
Any questions?
There's no data as far as money or instructional hours or
So the bilingual application flows through the SCG, depending on the number of students that are being served and the number of teachers that are qualified. We submit a report, a financial report, on September 30th of each year, outlining how the funds were spent on the previous year. So that's why you don't have a line item budget, but I can tell you that for this year, the allocation for bilingual is $597,331 with 87 cents. So that goes into operation, and it's spent on personnel, bilingual teachers. It's spent on professional development. It's spent on supplies and materials.
So you have categories that are involved in each of these activities, but no funds allocated there, either based on projection, anticipation, previous year, whatever the case is. And I'm just curious as to what we're approving other than just the text. There's nothing here that lists any funding or the number of people.
So, Mr. Wadiana, if you look at I don't know if you have it with you, but on the budget, when you approve the budget, all the SCG funds were broken down, just like the elementary fine arts at risk. All those funds were broken down by category. For example, personnel bilingual, 522,000 goes to personnel. Instructional materials, 50,000. Supplies, bilingual supplies, 40,000. So that's why on the application, because it flows through the SCG, it's not required to be broken down in the bilingual application. What they're more concerned about is program, and then come September, we report on the expenditures. But it's all budgeted in the budget that was approved, I think, in April.
So this form that you gave us, I don't know if you can see it. It's the one that I'm referring to that really doesn't have any data in it. And so I think it's difficult to take this form. I mean, what you're talking about, what's allocated in a different report, and ask us to approve these without making that information available on the sheets that you provide.
There really shouldn't be any funds on the bilingual application.
Well, even instructional hours, number of students, that's not provided, except as a total. And that's just the students.
Can you be more specific?
I believe
Let's go
that
over
was,
one.
I believe that information was all lined out when we approved the budget. All those, right now, what the application is, it's going in for us to get the bilingual fund. Before school starts, we can't tell you how many students are gonna be in bilingual program. And as far as line items, they were all in the budget as to what each thing was gonna be spent on. Now, if they do not approve that amount that was on our line items, then we have to go back into the budget and do adjustment.
Okay, so the data that the form that was included here is not available, but even then, everything for the next year's budget is based on projections. You don't know definitively anything for number of
It
students.
works from the prior year. It's on the prior year, the students that were served. So our budget for this coming year is based on the units that we received from the kids from last year. It's a year behind. So this year, the number of students we serve this year will generate the funds for the following year.
So that data is available and this form could have been filled out?
No, not necessarily, because this form is asking, this is the application. What the application is asking is for us to describe the courses and instructional materials that may be utilized. It asks us to describe the language proficiency and instructional materials that will be utilized. It asks us to describe educators and bilingual multicultural education program professional development that may be utilized. It asks us to describe parent advisory committees, how they're informed. And so this is more of a description of the proposed program that will be implemented for this upcoming school year. And then, like I said, by June 30th, we have to submit a budget report on how the funds were spent last year. But in this year's budget, we have a breakdown of how the funds may be spent.
Okay, one of the things that I was looking for in this data, or at least in your report, of how we fared, again, like in the, with Melissa, how we fared in the previous year. I know like hiring a bilingual teacher was a big problem and not being able to fill that. And as a matter of fact, I had a conversation with one of the persons that said she was an applicant and that she was very interested in coming to work with Cobre full-time as a bilingual teacher, and was told that she would be hired as a full-time teacher but wouldn't receive benefits. And maybe that's something that we could discuss maybe in a closed session part to get to that. But last year, we had a very dismal record on providing those services at the elementary schools. And I'd like to see where we're at with this coming year.
Yes, sir. We can certainly do that, and I can give you a report on next board's meeting. And just for FYI, we had a resignation at the beginning of the year last year that position was not filled because we didn't have a candidate. One of the candidates that did apply, we worked on getting her licensed, and she because it was so late in the year, and she was going to work as a long-term sub, but then decided not to work because there was other things that were on her agenda. So we can have that discussion, and I can let you know exactly what transpired here. But for this coming school year, we have bilingual teachers at every elementary school. Last year, one elementary bilingual teacher resigned, and that position wasn't filled because it was so late in the year.
Well, there was presentations during that year, and it didn't happen late in the year. It happened pretty early. And there were presentations that were made last year that there were candidates and there were viable options, and that never materialized.
I think that right now we need to move on in either approving or not approving the bilingual. We can talk about the personnel issue, which is out of our realm. In the next.
Agreed.
Okay, Mr. Sepulveda, Mr. President, members of the board, the administration recommends that you approve the bilingual application as presented, because I think there is timelines that we have to turn it in. Okay, so it's very important that we move forward.
Okay. You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
Gomez, so moved.
Motion by Mr. Gomez, second.
This is Gabe. I'll second it.
A second by Mr. Olguin. Take a roll call vote. Mr. Olguin.
Yes.
Mr. Guadiana.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Mr. Gomez.
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moves up to item H.
Item H is approval of the Fine Arts Education Act, the FAE Act, and I'll ask Dr. Carrillo to briefly explain this.
Mr. President, members of the board, again, the Fine Arts Education Act is a renewal, and it's also based on the number of students that are served the previous year through the SEG. Last year, the total amount that was generated for this year is $149,404.34. This one does have a breakdown because that's how they ask for it, and you can see it on the application. And I stand for questions.
Any question?
Do we have staffing identified for that? Last year, there was a problem with people that have retired.
So again, the majority of these funds pay for our music teacher, pay for our arts teacher, and then we bring special programs. We contract out for theater and dance. We advertise, and we try to solicit as many applicants as possible. And last year, we were very fortunate to get someone to do it, to collaborate with us from Silver. This year, we may get lucky and do that again. Last year, or the previous year, we had one of the dance instructors that became a teacher, and she's now teaching. So to answer your question, we don't have anybody right now for the dance, but we have it advertised. We never take it out from advertising, and we re-advertise on an ongoing basis. But for the most part, the funds are spent for the music teacher that provides services for all kids, and for the arts teacher that provides art instruction for all kids. The other two are contracted services that we try to enrich our kids with.
Well, I was very happy to see you were able to salvage the theater one at the very last minute. It was very compressed as far as the rehearsals that were going on, and there was a real struggle for everybody involved in that. But it was better than not having one, and it was a great program. So I'm hoping that this year it'll be able to start at the regular time, all of them, and I hope you can find instructors for that, because this is an element of instruction that is so different from the rest of the school. And so I'm glad we can offer this to the students of our district.
Yes, and it wasn't as a result of being the last minute. It was the availability of the instructor and trying to coordinate it for both districts. We
I
started,
understand.
we started early on, but it didn't materialize until towards the middle of the year.
Yeah, and to me, it was like it could have been a decision not to have it at all, but I'm very grateful you did have it, and I think it worked out very well considering the circumstances.
It was the first time that Silver and Cobre jointly were able to put an outstanding performance. You couldn't tell which kids were from Silver, which kids were from Cobre. So it was a great performance.
Oh, the
So I
Cobre was
concur with
better,
you.
man. No, I'm kidding. It was very good.
Well,
Any
I
other
agree with
questions?
you, Mr. Guardiano. I agree with you. Well, if there's no questions, then the administration
Mr. Mendoza?
recommends that you approve the fine arts education as presented.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Holguin, second.
I'll second. This is Gilbert.
Second by Mr. Williana. Any other questions? Call for roll call vote. Mr. Holguin,
Yes.
Mr. Williana,
Yes.
myself, yes. Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
any opposed? Motion carries. Moves us to item I.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, approval of the coronavirus aid relief and economic security. This is referred to by the federal government in the state of New Mexico as the CARES Act. And we received an appropriation, and I think we'll say it's an amount of a little over $380,000 that we must apply for, and these funds will be secured. At this time, Dr. Carrillo, can you update the board?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, through the CARES Act, our district, based on the number of students and the census, that's why it's so important to be counted. We were able to receive $384,038.77 for this school year. Well, to be spent within the next 2 years. This funding must be spent by June 2022. We, as you can see on the different line items where this money has been budgeted for, the district was able to create a task force comprised of parents, administrators, secretaries, different community members to come up with some ideas on how we wanted to be able to provide the support needed during this COVID national emergency. As you can see, I'm not going to go down each item unless you have any questions, but they're pretty much self descriptive there. We went ahead and broke it down even further through the committee, but for the grant application, they didn't want it to be broken down in detail. I'll give you an example. So if we look at the first item, purchasing educational technology, including assistive technology or adaptive equipment, we went ahead and allocated $35,200, and we went ahead and wrote online enrollment software add-on to the student information system, student device managing software. So when we break it down, when we break it down further, Okay. Oh,
What are you
okay.
reading from?
I was just corrected, well, not corrected, but advised that the bar does have the breakdown and you can see the breakdown, but I'll just continue with this example. So Power School, online enrollment, we're moving into online remote enrollment so that we can minimize the number of parents and students coming into the schools to enroll. So for year one, that would be 9,796. Year two, or on an annual basis, would be $6,045 for a total of $15,841. Go Guardian software, which is software that will assist with the devices for instructional use, where the students that have those devices at home and need support, our technology guys can go remotely into the device and try to fix any problems that they may have. Assistive technology for at-risk students or some of our kids that might need some assistive technology, that's 5,000. Student technology device protective cases. I don't know if you were aware that we purchased over 200 devices from Freeport funds that were reallocated. So we went ahead and budget 4,992. So it's broken down. And Terry just told me that you have that in the bar. If you wanted to go down each one to see, but if you have any questions, I stand for questions.
I'd like to receive that report that
Any
you're looking
questions?
at, because it helps a whole lot better than looking at the bar. The line items are nondescript, and it looks like a lot more thought was put into it than we can assess from this, from the bar. And
Okay,
I think
we'll
that
go ahead and email that to you, to all the board members.
I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Mr. Mendoza?
Yes, sir. Mr. President, members of the board, the administration recommends the approval of the CARES Act application as presented.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion? Who is that? Do I hear a motion?
Gomez, second.
Do I hear? Okay, Mr. Gomez, second. Who made the motion?
I'll make
Mr.
a
I can't
President,
hear.
Mr. President, no one made the motion. I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Gomez, second.
This is Gabe. I'll second it.
second.
Second by Mr. Holguin. Take a roll call vote. Mr. Holguin,
Yes.
Mr. Williana,
Yes.
myself, yes. Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
any opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to superintendent report.
Mr. President, members of the board, first one is the COVID-19 response plan to ensure safety of staff and students for the upcoming school year. This is an ongoing plan of action that we've been addressing. I know tomorrow we have another meeting that we will continue, but I've asked Joyce to give you an update on where the committee is. Joyce?
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Mendoza. So as Dr. Carrillo had mentioned to you, we do have a task force that we comprised of various stakeholders. We have parents, teachers, instructional coach, principals, nurse, counselor, technology department, daycare director, special ed director, early childhood, central office administrators, and attendance success initiative coach, as well as a social worker on the committee. We also have Alma from cafeteria that's on the committee too. So we have had 2 meetings so far. In the first meeting that we had, we looked at our school reentry options. So we have 3 options that we're looking at and discussing. The first one is complete distance learning. Second option is hybrid model where we have distance learning and face-to-face. And then third option would kind of run into a little bit of the way the second option is, where we have face-to-face with multiple groups, possibly one group coming in on 2 days a week and then hybrid 2 days a week at home. And then we'd have the other group come in the other 2 days. The committee has also looked at PPE equipment and needs, talking with the different principals. We did have a meeting today specifically with elementary principals and what their needs may be at the elementary. Tomorrow we have a meeting with the secondary principals and what their needs may be for secondary for either of these school reentry options that we may end up with. A lot of our decisions are going to be based on CDC recommendations and what the governor recommends for us to return back to school. We did have the committee give input into the CARES Act and looking at some of the different line items and the spending and where some of the money would be needed to be allocated. We've talked about tentative start date for next school year. As Mr. Mendoza mentioned, our two options right now is to keep with the calendar as it is, but based on recommendations from, again, the governor or the CDC, we may be looking at starting mid-August, August 17th, which means we would have to make up 8 days on the calendar. So we would look at coming on Fridays, if that were the situation, through the month of August, September, and October, so that we can make up those 8 days that we would miss if we do not come in August 3rd. We have another meeting tomorrow. One of the things that we're going to discuss tomorrow is we do have a survey. We got input from the elementary principals. We'll receive input from the committee tomorrow and also from the secondary principals. We are going to do a survey that will be emailed to all parents, and they will be asked questions such as whether they intend to have their child return to school next year. Looking at the different options for re-entry would be the hybrid model, full-time distance learning model, seeing what parents prefer and getting feedback from them so that we can use that information from our survey results to continue to help guide the committee in the direction that we're going to move in for the fall. Any questions?
Yes,
Joy,
this is
Toy.
Gabe.
Go ahead, Gabe.
Okay, thanks, Toy. So my question would be is if we're going to do face-to-face instruction and have kids in the classroom, then what is going to be the plan for sanitizing surfaces, cleaning restrooms, anything that, all those CDC guidelines and recommendations to make sure that we're cleaning. Last time I asked this question, Mr. Mendoza said that we didn't have any plans to increase our janitorial staff based on funding. So I'm still curious on this. I mean, how are we gonna do this and make sure that it's clean and safe for our kids if we have face-to-face time?
Again, this applies to the CARES Act, and thank you for asking that, Mr. Holguin. Yes, we've discussed it in the committee, and we organized and brought our ordering for our PPE supplies. And we have one of the nurses, along with Joyce Varela, will be putting together requisitions to purchase all the necessary items to sanitize, to have our face covers, and to have our machines that we're going to need to get the students' temperature. All that will be ordered hopefully by tomorrow. We're working fast on that. Now, you asked about additional help. The only way I can do that to avoid hiring some people, and the thing about hiring extra janitorial, not only will it hit our SEG, but it's the benefits that really take us to the bank. All right, so what the best thing I can do is under Senate Bill 9 is contract out with local cleaning companies that are available to come in and blitz and help us out on situations like this. So yes, that is the plan right now, is the hiring of these companies. And I know they even come out of Las Cruces and so forth that they come, but that's not only Cobre, but knowing today with talking to with the superintendents this morning, they're all feeling the same way. Of course, this is $1, and if it doesn't work, of course, the last thing would be the hiring full-time people. But we will, to answer your question again, tentative plans right now is to contract that out, and we do have people available.
Mr.
So,
Levine,
so Mr. Mendoza,
we did put in some money into the CARES Act as well. If we need to look at contracted companies as well for that.
so I guess my follow-up question would be, would those contract specs provide for daily or even hourly cleaning? I mean, because that's basically what it's going to take. It's going to take quite the effort to maintain some of that those recommendations.
Okay, right now we're talking about through the scheduling, depending what the parents would like, whether it's a half, where the students come Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday. It gives us a chance to use our personnel to clean. But if everybody comes in and we have full-time students in attendance, yes, we know that we're going to need some help. And at this point, so that's why we're rushing to get information so we can make sound decisions on what our schools are going to look like. And today, for one, we took the committee at the high school and we looked at a classroom that I want to thank Sandra and her custodial staff that put it together so that we could comply not only with the cleaning, but also the distancing that has to take place between the students and so forth. So it's quite a task that we have before us. But for me to give you the straight answers right now, maybe at the next board meeting as we go, we're learning as we go and we're finding out. One thing that was brought to our attention is that we cannot wait any longer. Again, we have to place in orders tomorrow to be able to even have assurances that we'll have this stuff in hand by August. Okay, so now it's competition throughout the state, but the nation is asking for all this, and that's where we're at. But more information coming, Mr. Holguin. But let me tell you, this committee is working hard and is really helping us to answer all the questions.
Yeah,
Thank you.
are you through, Gabe?
Oh yeah, I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. My question was, Joyce, was on the keeping the kids at a safe distance apart. That's going to be a chore in itself. The other thing is on back when we went on break that the virus had already started. The state had told us that we were not going to have to make up those days. Is that still in effect, or are we looking at something else now? Because you said a while ago we got 8 days and we're going to have to make up. But I thought that they had told us at one point that we did not have to make up the days.
So we don't have to make up days from this 2019-2020 school year. Mr. Sepulveda, the days that I was talking about is right now we're scheduled to come to school on August 3rd. If the state comes back and says we're not allowed to open before the middle of August, that would put us at August 17th. And we need to get in our full calendar days, then we would be looking at those 2 weeks which is 8 days to make up. That would be for next calendar year, not for this calendar year.
Oh,
okay. Also answer.
Thank you.
Also answer the question. Mr. Sepulveda, to answer that question, we can always apply for a waiver and ask for a hardship and see if they would allow us to do that. But we're required to have 165 days, say if I'm not of instructional time. And this is why I'm saying it's a new year, it's a new calendar. So I assume they're going to expect us to do that. But I certainly would, on the recommendation of the board, approval of the board, I would ask for a waiver and see how far it will go.
Okay, thank you.
I also had a question. I had a question on if a student comes in and you take a temperature, he's got a high temperature, and both parents work, what is the plan?
The plan right now is we're working on the plan. Not only that, that's a good question. I mean, it's really driving us to figure out how. Let me give you another scenario. They're asking us to make sure the bus people test before the kid gets on the bus. I don't see how that's going to work too well. So if a kid's on the bus waiting for the bus driver or whoever tests the kid tests really has a high temperature, kid can't get on the bus. Where's the parents, or how do we go? That's a lot of answers that we're as superintendents we have before the PED, and we won't know what they're going to say until this Thursday morning. And what we're, believe me or not, we're asking them about that. We're also having that same question for the opening for practice, the opening for football, what is our fall sports, cross country, volleyball, and so forth, and cheerleading too. If they're going to come practice, we have to take the student's temperature and the coach's temperature, and what happens if a kid comes and who's going to monitor and all that. So there's a lot of questions on that. But we also are in line. We've set up where hopefully the health department, we're trying to schedule it. Now, let's see, is Nelson Diaz? Nelson, are you on the line? Nelson? Nelson, are you awake?
There you are. I was trying to unmute myself. Yes, sir, I'm online.
Nelson, can you please just give a quick update in reference to when the health department, we're tentatively scheduling when we're going to test all the people here that are working this summer and the coaches that are supposedly doing. And right now, members of the board, we're looking at a date of July 8th as the first date.
July 6th.
Is it July 8th, Nelson?
July 6th.
I'm sorry, July 6th, when the first day of actual practice that we can have and safely comply with the CDC rules. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. But quickly, Nelson, explain to the board what has to take place on I think you said the 30th or the 31st of June.
So the NMAA has set out some guidelines for us to follow so that we can get started with summer practices or summer workouts. They set a start date of June 15th, which we felt was a little early. We wouldn't be able to get everything we need at that time. So the date that we felt like we could get everything situated and ready to go would be July 6th. We have to test everybody 7 days prior to the start date. So that would put us at June 30th. At that June 30th date, we would like to have the Department of Health come to Cobre, probably the high school, and we would be able to test all of our coaches, open it up for the rest of the district as well to be tested at that time, and possibly community. So we would put it out there and recommend that students also be tested at that time.
Okay. That includes central office administrators. We're all going to be through that, but it's we're all going to have
Mr. Diaz. Mr. Diaz, this is Toy.
Hi, Toy. How are you?
And you plan to test everybody in one day?
We would like to, yes. The Department of Health would do a drive-through test. They have a minimum of 50 people. So we have to have at least 50 people in order for them to come. So I'm assuming they would be able to get them through within that day. I would assume in a few hours.
Okay.
They said it would take probably 2 hours to test. They did it in Lordsburg and they tested 75 people in 2 hours.
And that included students and everybody.
That included whoever wanted to. Well, actually, they did the 75 people at a jail. But they've done other drive-through clinics where they've had more and it's never lasted more than 3 hours. And the ones getting
Okay.
tested just drive in their car, get tested, and automatically leave. So no one's staying around. The only ones in the hot sun will be the HMS or the Department of Health people.
Yeah, Mr. Sepulveda, this is Gabe. I would just say, I don't know if anybody's been tested. I've been tested twice because of a couple of scares at work. But I would, the times that I went, the testing was very quick. It's a drive-through scenario, and it's fast. It takes a couple of minutes and you're out of there. You stay in your car the whole time. Those Department of Health folks are out at your window. They swab you and move on. It's quick.
Okay. I'm just wondering.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I still had a couple of questions. One is, are summer sessions canceled?
Summer sessions as far as athletics or school?
No, school.
So the K5 Plus program has been canceled. One of the things that we did right into the CARES Act, because we didn't want children to be idle for the whole summer. So we did write in some summer enrichment, where we will be hiring some of our teachers to do 3 hours a week of enrichment for students from birth to high school, so that we can still offer some activities for our students to be engaged.
And summer school? For kids that are in need of...
It'll be a virtual summer enrichment, but the K5 program, as we've known it for the last few years, that one will not happen this year.
Okay.
Or the extended learning time either.
So the last question I had was, if it is that we're supposed to start in mid-August as opposed to the beginning of August, is there a contingency plan that would put us doing distance learning beginning at August, so the early part of August, so we wouldn't have to make up any days?
That is something that I will discuss this coming Thursday with the PED. And we certainly have the equipment here or is coming. And thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Guardena. Yes, that is on the books as a plan. But we'll have to get permission on that, because a lot of districts in the state of New Mexico have asked, or we're planning to start as early as the third week in July. And I don't know if they're going to get approved on that. So more information is coming, and that's a good question. And certainly at the next board meeting, we'll let you know if the equipment's here. We have it on hand. Joyce?
So one more thing that I do want to share is Dr. Carrillo did let you know that we did purchase a little over 200 Chromebooks for students this summer. But we have been working with the state, who have been working with the feds, and they did allow us to reallocate some of our funds from the Circle grant. So we have just submitted a purchase for 1,000 Chromebooks. So we will be able to issue a Chromebook to every single student.
That is awesome.
Yep.
That's the contingency plan.
Okay, Mr. Mendoza, continue.
Yes, sir. Okay, in reference to what the board just approved for our agendas, our meeting dates for the next board meeting, I had put down the 27th, but now that I've got clear direction, our next board meeting in July will be the 13th. So can you all kind of scratch that and write that? And I will make sure that Irene, when she does the form, will have the 2 board meetings in each month, with the exception of December, where we're on fall break, and when the date falls on a holiday and so forth. But we'll clean it up and we'll send it out, and I'll have her email it to you all so that you can have it. That's what you formally approved, and we'll clean it up. And I'm sure Irene's listening now, and we'll get it done. So with that in mind, we'd like to go to finance. Mr. President, we have 4 items. And the first one on finance is review of bills, and any questions we have from February to April. And we have Terry on the other end of the line. Any questions? Okay. Terry, any comments?
No, it's 3 months of review of bills.
I'll make a recommendation right now, Mr. President, and that's that you approve as presented.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
Gomez, I make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Gomez, second. Do I hear a second?
This is Gabe. I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Gomez, second by Mr. Holguin. Take a roll call vote. Mr. Holguin,
Yes.
Mr. Guadiana,
No, usually what I do is abstain, but this case it's no. We don't have it. We don't have the information to make an assessment of $5.2 million of expenditures in any way, shape, or form. So no, I do not approve.
myself, yes. Mr. Gomez?
Yes.
Okay. Please let the minutes show that, myself, Mr. Gomez, and Mr. Holguin voted yes, Mr. Guadiana, no. Motion passes. Item B.
Okay, item B is a bar, initial budget for the CARES Act. Terry, can you address that, please?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, the CARES Act bar goes along with the CARES Act application. What we had to do is kind of do a crosswalk between what the actual expenditures are listed as requested on the application and then the line items that are available to us to be able to use as a budget item. So if you bridge between what Dr. Carrillo presented as far as what the things are for, and all I did was take that and put it into the appropriate line items.
The administration recommends that you approve as presented by Terry.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion? Do I hear a motion?
Gomez, I make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Gomez, second.
I'll second. Ms. Gilbert.
Second by Mr. Guadiana. Take a roll call vote. Mr. Holguin,
Yes.
Mr. Guadiana,
Yes.
myself, yes. Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
motion carries. Move to item C.
Yeah, item C is a bar decrease operational. Terry, can you provide explanation on this, please?
Yes, the decreased bar came from an adjustment that the PED made with extended learning time, what was the initial state projections versus what was the district actual enrollment in the extended learning program. And that resulted in 121,581 decrease bar because since it was the initial program, the extended learning, it was the first year the state projected our full enrollment as part of the extended learning time. And so we had less than the 1,196 kids that the state projected in the first place. So this is just to true up the budget on the PED side and to show that money will not be received by the district. It wasn't money that we have to pay back. It was money that was adjusted by PED and they won't send it to us.
Okay, the administration recommends that this action be allowed, sir.
You heard the
What was the
recommendation.
rationale
Do I hear a motion?
Excuse me, did you have a question, Mr. Guadiana?
We didn't have the number of students.
Yeah, I understand that, but the choice, was it just limited to this line item, or was there other line items that it could have been taken from?
The likely line item that you would use would be additional compensation for teachers, because that's where it was budgeted in the first place. So taking it back out of there was the likely
Okay.
line item.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sorry, Mr. President.
That's all right. Okay, you heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move. Ms. Gilbert.
Motion by Mr. Guadiana, second.
This
Who
is Gabe, I'll
second?
second it. Gabe,
Second by Mr. Holguin. Take a roll call vote. Mr. Holguin,
yes.
Mr. Guadiana,
Yes.
myself, yes. Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
motion carries. Moves us to item D.
Item D is another bar, and this is a transfer operational, the same line item. And Terry, can you please provide explanation
Yes,
to the board?
Mr. President, members of the board. This operational transfer, it's also to true up the budget from what was initially budgeted back when we built the budget in April, making adjustments according to the way the line items were used. And the bulk of it is coming from, well, all of it is coming from the line item for summer school after school programs that was budgeted $302,000 and divided into, and this is only when we go out of function. And this is to prevent also the difference between the state, what the state has in their system and what we have in our system. You remember that Mike Stone, when he presented, said that there were some issues with out of function transfers that didn't hit the PED. This has a very stringent deadline of when we have to close out and make sure that we make our transfers to PED.
So going from the 1,000 line items to the 2,000 line items, is that what distinguishes it as?
Yes, that's what distinguishes it as a transfer bar rather than just a maintenance bar that goes within function.
So when you add money to retirement, how is it that we would add money to?
This was to correct when we initially budgeted back in April of last year. That budget was rough. As you remember, that was my first budget. So that budget was very rough. And so this is to correct some of the things where we had probably hired somebody or hadn't budgeted fully for that position, and we made sure that we adjusted the budget accordingly. So these benefits go along with whatever salary that we're correcting as well.
The salaries that you were correcting was only $1 according to this.
No, it's $50,000.
Where is that?
That's on the third line down, the second line down.
Okay.
The school support. So it's 50,000. It's one FTE.
Okay. And there's
the $1 that went into that area was for just a slight salary adjustment. I think that for me, that was just a slight error, dollar error.
So the other FTE that was added was for what?
That was in the 2400 function. That was a secretary at the high school. She's the one that's been doing our athletic program. And she's the one that sits at the front desk.
And again, the first one was where?
The first one was the second line. It was school student support, and that one was the attendance success or truancy specialist.
Or truancy? But didn't we have that position already?
It was grant funded before, but we went ahead and picked it up because we saw the need for the at-risk kids to make sure that we kept that program.
So in addition to the grant funded positions, we added one more.
No, the grant went away.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mendoza.
Okay, now we go to items for next agenda, and I have one, the request from Mr. Gomez.
We haven't voted on this one yet, Mr. Mendoza.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Do we have a recommendation?
Yes, a recommendation to approve as presented by Terry.
Here's the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
I move, Ms. Gilbert.
Motion by Mr. Guadiana, second.
Gomez, second.
Second by Mr. Gomez. Take a roll call vote. Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Guadiana.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Mr. Gomez.
Yes.
Carries. Brings us to item 7.
Yes, sir, items for next agenda.
The only thing that I have for the next agenda is the bond update.
Okay, but we do have a request from Mr. Gomez to bring Victor Arambula and bring an update and discuss our security camera system, okay? And Victor's aware of it.
Yes.
I guess that's all we have right now, board members.
Mr. Mendoza, can you throw in
Yeah.
the high school handbook?
Can you repeat that again?
Can you please throw in the high school handbook, the student handbook?
Sure. And also the elementary handbook. And maybe the middle school. Let's bring them all. Is that okay, Mr. President?
Yes.
Okay. Nelson, are you still on? Are you ready to bring the athletic handbook also?
Yes, that's what I was just saying right now. If we can include that one, we'll have it ready for next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, we had made deadline for having some milestones on the superintendent's performance, and that should be a closed session item that we should review as to how that's going with the completion of that. It was supposed to be by the end of the school year.
Mr. President, I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Also, I don't know if it'd be appropriate for the a closed session or if it's an open session, but the administrative movements, reassignments that have been made. I've heard some concerns from some of the parents, so I don't know what venue that would be, a closed or open session discussion.
If names are mentioned, Mr. Guardiana, it needs to go to executive, okay? We
Yeah,
can't do it. And I also want to advise the board that there is a fine line between going into personnel, which is total responsibility of the superintendent versus the board.
Yes.
So I asked that, Mr.
Yes.
President, that you address that, please.
Understood.
Okay.
Yes. Anything else? Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Mr. Garcia. Thank everybody that was on here.
Toy,
Somebody got something else?
Yeah, this is Gilbert. Are we going to set up a calendar for budget committee meetings, Mr. Mendoza?
Yes, we can do that, sir.
Okay, and also I've had a request, Terry, for the salaries per school.
Mr. Guardiano, on the salaries, we're still not set on that. And let me tell you, we're waiting for the 18th of this month when the legislative session is done, that special one, because we're going to have to retract the 4% and possibly as high as 7%. And these aren't concrete figures. So what we can give you is what we did, but it's going to be different here in a couple of weeks. So let us know if you want what we have as is, but it's not going to stand. Okay, we have to abide by the law as it changes.
So in a couple of weeks, I could have them.
Oh yes, sir. That's public record, sir. You're more than welcome. But what we give you is something that's not going to stand, and it might cause some problems in your calculations of figures later on. So yeah, it's in a couple of weeks. Once we know that, because we have to notify all staff.
And
as soon as the legislature does their thing.
Okay,
Yes,
that's
right.
fine. But the other part too, I've never received a line item budget from you, Mr. Mendoza. I don't think any of the board has.
I can get that to you, and it's also like I always say, it's for public record, and it'll be on the as soon as I can get Victor and them to put it on, and it'll be on our website on our district. We'll have that going to you guys tomorrow, because I think I'm going to have Irene also do the correction on the meetings for the rest of the year, so that we're all on the same page.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just wanted to mention before you guys head out that there was some public input that Mr. Arambula had on there. Just want to let you guys know. It's in the chat.
What was it?
Yes, I was going to mention that too. Yes.
Yeah, what was it?
Yes, Mr. Frank Arias asked if it was around the time when you guys were talking about the COVID. So he asked if the board budget can be reallocated to higher janitorial or help with the COVID response. And the second question he asked was when the Cobre track will be open to the public, and that it's very limited to walking aside in sidewalks in Bayard. I don't know how you want me to answer that.
Right now, the track until the contractor comes over and does what they need to do to correct the imperfections on it. I don't think we can let anybody there, because then they'll blame that. You know how contractors are. They can come back and say, no, it wasn't us. It was the people walking on it before they did the imperfections. So that, I say, until they do that, that's the only answer that I think we have for that. Is that right, Mr. Mendoza?
Yes, and I have been contacted by Hellas, and as a matter of fact, they're scheduling a team to come in, and hopefully, when this Mr. Peru or different, hopefully we should be hearing here pretty soon. They're coming on that, and it's a safety issue. If somebody's running out there and they run in that specific lane that needs to be addressed, they can get hurt. And then also keep in mind that our fields and everything is owned by the district, and it's not necessarily owned in conjunction with the city, and it's ours, and we have to comply with the PED bylaws and what they're limiting us to. So right now we don't have all our buildings and our facilities open, but we should be hearing something here But I think Nelson it's next, I think next week, the 14th is when you have your other meeting. Or there is a board meeting from the NMMA. Is that correct?
Yes.
Nelson, did you hear me? I can answer
Say that
that.
again?
Yeah, it's Nelson, is that you?
Yes.
Okay, when is your next board meeting with the New Mexico Athletic Association?
We don't have any upcoming board meetings yet. She usually tells us a week in advance. We do have some meetings in the next couple of days, sport-specific meetings with her. Is there a specific question that I might have missed it?
The question is why we haven't allowed the public access to the track field. And I've told them that, number one, Mr. Sepulveda said that we're having warranty work done on it, and
Right.
That hasn't been, and that's a safety issue. But other than that, we have to get clearance from the pet
Right.
department to open facilities, and I think that's coming here in the next couple of weeks, if I hear correct.
Yes, I think once the NMA has kind of opened up the fields and play and things like that, I think we can start looking at bringing the community back into the fold as well. Of course, there are some things that we need to make sure that they still abide by certain rules and regulations. So we got to make sure that we still apprise the public of those regulations once we open again.
Okay, thank you.
But can we make sure that we respond to the people who asked the questions? If they've already left the forum?
Yeah, I'll make sure
Yes.
somebody responds.
Yes, sir. I just responded. This was on our YouTube channel.
Okay. Thank you. And I would just like to mention for their benefit that we understand that it is not the municipal board that runs this. It is the school districts, but we also recognize that none of this would have happened if it wasn't the public paying for it. So with that, we will try to do our best.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
Motion to adjourn.
I move.
Motion, Mr. Wayne, and we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Mr. Garcia, for your good job, and Cindy Lee, if you're still on, thank you for your good job.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Sandra.
Thank
Good
you.
job, Coach. Good job,
Bye,
Mr.
Manu.
Adios. You guys have a good evening.
Bye. See you later,
Bye.
Gabe. See you, Mr. Padu.
Okay.